Hey everyone, and welcome to the Check Engine Light podcast. We have made it into April. April actually means quite a lot here on this channel. First and foremost, warmer weather on the horizon. This was the longest, coldest winter I can remember on record, at least in my lifetime, because we had cold temperatures from the beginning of November all the way to now on April 2nd as I'm filming this podcast. It's like 40 degrees outside. It is cold. It is damp. It is disgusting. But thankfully, we are a couple of weeks away from car season. We're also a couple weeks away from some software updates for Volkswagen. And you guys know this has become a Volkswagen-centric channel. As much as I don't want to be Volkswagen-centric, it has. And actually, we are going to be talking about the new Volkswagen Atlas because I am a bit disappointed. But software updates are coming soon. There will be an update on that in the upcoming weeks because there's actually some bad news on that front. And I had a feeling this was going to happen. After talking with a number of people at Audi and understanding how their software updates were delivered and who got them, who didn't, it's sounding like it's going to be the exact same problem for Volkswagen or Volkswagen owners, where I don't think everyone is going to be getting that software update. But I got to take a deeper dive into that. I got to talk to some people on my end at some local Volkswagen dealerships, and then I can give you guys an honest answer, a true answer, because I think, much like with Audi, if you don't have a check engine light, if you don't have error codes, you're not getting that software update. And I understand the liability aspect from the manufacturer and the dealer side of things, but I also will understand the frustrations from customers as well. Also, since we are a couple of weeks away from car season, I might be making an announcement that I am semi-retiring from my photography. Now, a lot of you guys don't know this because a lot of you are new here. During the car season, cars become a hobby again, where I take out my camera, I take photos at car shows, post them up on Instagram. I don't know if I'm going to do that this year. I think all I really want to do for car season is go to some great shows, meet some friends, chat with some friends, and have some adventures and not even post anything on social media. But I have to think about that because there are some events coming up that are hosted by some good friends of mine, and I want them to have photos of the events. So I'm going to see, but I'm considering semi-retirement. Now, diving into some of the news here, I just want to get right into this 2027 Volkswagen Atlas because I'm disappointed. I am really disappointed, and this has been weeks of disappointment because I knew this was coming. I didn't know exactly what this vehicle was going to look like, but I just knew that Volkswagen wasn't going to take the measures that were necessary for a crossover in this class. Now, as you guys know, I have a Volkswagen Tiguan, the year-long tester. What I'm going to tell you this right now is that by the end of 2026, the Atlas will not be making its way into my fleet, and I'm just not spending $60,000 for this thing. So the reason why I'm disappointed with this new Atlas, and let's just dive into what it is, right? Like what this generation is offering. Built on the MQB Evo platform that underpins the Volkswagen GTI and the Volkswagen Tiguan, has the EA888 Gen 5 motor, which I gotta be honest, this engine isn't the disappointment, but rather the horsepower. I mean, you're looking at like 282 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. That's no different, really, than an SEL R-Line turbo for the Volkswagen Tiguan. I think there's only about a 14 horsepower difference from the Tiguan. So I feel like that's not enough in this market. Even though this is the most powerful Atlas ever offered in the US, that's just not going to cut it in this growing class where you have formidable foes from Kia, from Hyundai, from Toyota, and especially since a hybrid model isn't coming until the mid-cycle refresh, I don't know here. Numbers-wise, on paper, I'm not a huge fan. Now, for the interior, though, it's a carbon copy of the Volkswagen Tiguan. You have that full digital gauge cluster. You have that infotainment system, which I was hoping was going to be updated for the Atlas, which obviously it's not. We have the ambient lighting. Obviously, they would never drop that package or feature. You have a 15-inch infotainment system and Napa leather seats on the high end with massaging front seats. Now, at $60,000, or even where some people are thinking it's going to start around $42,000 to $45,000, massaging seats, leather trim seats, and ambient lighting is just not enough here. It really isn't. Yes, it looks good on the inside. It looks great. It looks somewhat Audi-like. But I just don't feel like these particular features are going to get it done. Why was the Kia Telluride so successful right from the start at the beginning of the decade? Well, Kia prioritized interior space. They prioritized the intangibles. They prioritized the fact you're going to have a V6. They had great technology. The technology in the first generation Telluride was fantastic. And then for the second generation, we have a Land Rover-like SUV now. I have to see one in person. I have not. I have to dive into one and do a review. But I feel like Volkswagen just currently doesn't have a vehicle that is going to be competing with the behemoths and the Goliaths in this class. Now, what you also have here too is a vehicle that's not much larger than last generation. So practicality-wise, I don't expect anything to be significantly altered or changed in a positive way. Now, there are some smaller dynamics and smaller features that I think people are definitely going to like the power liftgate coming standard, rear sunshades, dual wireless phone charging, which that's becoming big in this market. And then you also have the onboard assistant. Again, features that are typically found on the Tiguan. But what Volkswagen always did well was putting in a lot of these features on the lower end. I'm curious to see what they do with their trims. Because if you can get like an SE and have like ventilated seats or massaging seats at an SE level, which will never happen, but if you can get it below $50,000 or right around there, now we're talking about an SUV that I think could most certainly embarrass in terms of features the Toyota Grand Highlander and the Honda Pilot. But I just feel like with the Volkswagen Atlas, it isn't it. And the reason why I feel that, the reason why I'm saying that is because from the Volkswagen Tiguan's perspective, you had the second generation, which was a boxy SUV, a boxy, family-friendly SUV that I'd argue was not the most dynamic. Even though people want to say that it had the best handling, its size was its biggest detriment. Then for the third generation, they made it smaller, built on a more rigid chassis, the MQB Evo platform. They give you a bit more power on the lower end. They throw in all these features that's not typically found in the compact crossover market. And then on top of that, the cherry on top is they give you an CEL R-Line turbo with almost Audi Q5-like performance. And the Atlas didn't have that same glow-up for this next generation. Because even though from the outside, yes, there's a cooler lighting system, and for the rear it looks somewhat Audi-like, there's just nothing profound. There is nothing new. There's nothing cutting edge. And yes, this is somewhat luxurious, but a lot of three-row crossovers are luxurious. And if you think about its closest rivals, and I'm going to be hyper-focused on that Telluride, what is beneath the Telluride? The Sorento. And the Sorento and the Telluride don't share anything in common. They never did. For Volkswagen, there is no middle-tier crossover. There's no mid-size crossover that's lying between the Atlas and the Tiguan. If you want to call the Atlas Cross that, you can. But there's not that bridge. And so you have this vehicle that's just a larger Tiguan, whereas with Kia, you have that mid-tier crossover, but it's nothing like the Telluride. So you feel as though you're getting a premium SUV. So I'm curious to see what Volkswagen does with the performance, what they do with the chassis and the platform overall. Is it going to be comfortable to drive? Because the last generation Atlas I drove, I'm going to be honest, I was let down. I was let down by that Turbo 4. The 8-speed automatic just doesn't cut it. And, you know, ride quality, there are most certainly better out there. And I would argue that looking at some of the three-row crossovers, even from Toyota, from Honda, I would even go in the Mazda direction with the CX-70 and CX-90. The Atlas is just going to find itself in the middle. It's just going to find itself in the middle of the three-row crossover market. So I'm really disappointed by that because I was really hoping that Volkswagen would give this vehicle something unique and also more of an upscale demeanor. And I just don't feel like we've gotten that here. But I will wait until I think third or fourth quarter when these things arrive at the dealership to give an honest answer and an honest take on the Volkswagen Atlas. Diving into Toyota, this was a big one. So Toyota is having some issues with fulfilling orders when it pertains to their new RAV4, the 2026 Toyota RAV4. And in some ways, some people could argue that it has been a bit of a disaster. But this is having a ripple effect across the compact crossover market, possibly even entering the used segment as well. So believe it or not, this is according to CarBuzz, The Toyota RAV4 was outsold for the first time in history, by the Nissan Rogue. Putting all this into perspective as to how the Nissan Rogue has outsold the Toyota RAV4, and also kind of putting into perspective just how low the sales numbers really are here, this is from CarBuzz. Toyota recently launched an all-new RAV4, and since the 2026 model year started to roll out, sales have fallen off the proverbial cliff. Last month, sales were down from 41,509 units a year ago to just 21,693. That is nearly a 50% reduction in sales, or close to. Year to date, the figure has gone from 115,402 units to only 59,869. That's a drop in sales equivalent to the entire run of Toyota Highlanders sold last year. What's the problem? Production. Toyota hasn't ramped up its plant in Kentucky to build it, although they are investing heavily into the Kentucky plant. Look through the handful of 2026 RAV4 models in dealer inventory, and the VINs all show they are either built in Japan or Canada. Since those plants can't meet everyone's demand, there just aren't enough vehicles. This should get better, but it's going to take some time. Toyota spokesperson who talked to CarBuzz says the RAV4 volume was impacted by the model changeover to the all-new model. Okay, so new platform, new powertrain. I get it. Happens all the time, but really not this far into a quarter. The car's been on sale for, I think, 3 months now. So this should have already been dealt with, but it's not looking that great, at least for the first half of the year, saying that as is typical during a transition like this, production and availability can be affected as manufacturing shifts from the outgoing model to the new one. Okay, I can buy that, although this didn't happen with the Camry as much a couple of years ago. Toyota's production is continuing to ramp up. We're told that the Japanese auto manufacturer expects to be back at full capacity by the summer. Still, that's nearly a half year's worth of diminished sales. Considering this vehicle had almost 500,000 sales last year, that's going to be felt on the company's bottom line. So, just looking at sales numbers alone there, and what this does, I mean, if you're looking at, say, a 40 to 50% reduction in sales for the year, where are those sales going to? What rival is out there? Luckily for Toyota, they chose a great time to have this problem, because there are no formidable foes in this market. At least, maybe according to the numbers, you have the CR-V. But looking at the rest of the market, there's not a lot of great choices out there. Now, I do think the Subaru Outback is a better value with the full gas-powered model. Once we get to the hybrids, that's going to get interesting. Although I do think Toyota has a better hybrid system than what Subaru is using, which is also Toyota, but an older software and older system. So if you're someone who's into that type of thing, you might go in the RAV4 direction. But the Kia Sportage, the Hyundai Tucson, the Mazda CX-5, Volkswagen with their issues, at least on the high end, there's not a lot of compact crossovers out there that's setting the world on fire. So if there's 1 year to see a downside in sales, this would be it for the RAV4. Although, again, it is going to have some major implications on the used side, because for a 2025 Toyota RAV4, believe it or not, with 10,000 miles, and just for instance, let's say an XLE, you are paying MSRP or just over that on the used market. So if you bought a last generation RAV4, say a 2024 or 2025 model year, you probably have not lost anything in terms of your vehicle's resale value. That's crazy. That is just crazy. But again, I still think there's implications here across the board. Whether new or used, those buyers have to go somewhere. And whether it's used, this could, again, increase the issues when it pertains to the day supply of used vehicles, especially for vehicles around $30,000 or below. And there are some RAV4s at that price point. You also have to take in consideration that this is going to affect resale values for other crossovers as well. If a CR-V is in demand, if a Mazda CX-5 is in demand, Mazda CX-50, this could all change things. This could most certainly change the market for at least the first 6 months of the year. And more specifically, if you want a last generation RAV4, which I have to be honest is aging very well. It really is. If you don't want to go in the hybrid or plug-in hybrid direction, you're paying a premium. You're going to be paying MSRP. The era of people saying that cars lose 10 to 20% of their value when you drive it out the lot, that isn't always the case in this market, especially now. in the 2020s. So you have SUVs, you have crossovers like a RAV4 that are holding their resale value. Even though you weren't considering moving on necessarily within 1 to 3 years, you could and not lose much on depreciation. That is just insane. But it gets even better than that, because we're going to transition to the biggest story of the day. And in fact, I feel like the statistics are off. In fact, I think they're a bit too, not optimistic, I think they're a bit more pessimistic than what the real industry and what it's really like out in the car market right now. And that is a report from IC Cars. IC Cars I'm a bit skeptic on. They're not always accurate, especially with their reviews and when they go over interior and cargo space. So I never really use them as a metric, although what they have found out in 2025 has gone industry-wide. Every journalist is talking about this, talking about vehicles that depreciate the least in a 5-year depreciation curve. And they have the top 25 and the bottom 25, which some of these might surprise you. And again, a lot of this, I'm a bit skeptic because it is a 5-year study. Much like we saw with J.D. Power, I don't like 5-year studies in this particular decade. In the 2010s, yes, fine. But in this decade, it doesn't work. And in fact, some of these numbers, I think, again, are a bit too pessimistic. So if you take a look at this chart here, the top 25 vehicles, we're only going to go over the top 10. So the Porsche 718 Cayman has a depreciation curve of 9.6%. Only about a $6,000 difference. And again, this is the model as a whole. So they're not taking into consideration like a GTS or GT4. So this could easily be just a base Cayman that is making up most of this depreciation. Then you also have the Porsche 911, which I don't buy that. I think the depreciation curve on that is a bit lower than 11%. The Chevrolet Corvette, I just kind of want to laugh at that because the C8 Corvette is dropping like a rock. You can buy one for under $60,000, maybe even closer to $50,000. Again, this is a 5-year depreciation curve. The Toyota Tacoma at 19.9%, not with the current Tacoma. They're definitely not keeping their value there, especially with their reliability issues. The Toyota Tundra, the Honda Civic, Subaru BRZ, I have no idea why there's not a GR86 there. The Toyota GR Supra, which this one, I don't like seeing these numbers here at 24% and $13,000 or $14,000 price difference, because you're not finding a B58 powered Supra, whether manual or automatic, that's $13,000 below MSRP. Not happening. I have a feeling that most of that number is coming from the 2-liter turbo. Then you also have the Toyota RAV4 at 25.2% depreciation, and the last one is the Toyota Corolla hatchback. But then you have the Toyota 4Runner as well, but that is the V6. We have no idea what the 4-cylinder model is going to be like, especially with the hybrid. But a lot of Toyotas, a lot of Hondas, a lot of Subarus, interesting, especially near the bottom of this list. Subaru Crosstrek, Subaru Impreza, Subaru WRX. You also have, near the bottom, the Mazda Miata, which that is one thing I want to talk about. There's some cars on this list where it's like, no, they're not depreciating 31%. And these are the things that we have to dive into, and probably in a more separate video, in a video where I can just dive into it more uniquely, because what we're seeing on the used car market right now, and not for all vehicles, I want to keep this in mind here. So like if you buy a Volkswagen, prepare for that depreciation. You want to buy, maybe a Kia or Hyundai, there might be a depreciation there. But if you're looking at purchasing a GR86, a Mazda Miata, a Honda Civic Si, those 3 cars are not losing any value in a 3-year depreciation curve. You can look at a 2023 Honda Civic Si right now, and dealers are selling them for MSRP. You can look at a Toyota GR86, like a 2024 model, premium, going for above MSRP. The same is happening for the Mazda Miata. The Mazda Miata is we have seen price increases substantial. Like according to Car Gurus, you're looking at like a 14% increase in appreciation this year so far. And year over year with the Mazda Miata, it's up 14%. You look at the GR86, it's up marginally. These cars are not depreciating, they're appreciating at a time when right now you're entering the spring buying season, so big for sports cars, but this just shouldn't be happening, not at the rates that they are. Now, looking at the vehicles that are depreciating big time, most of them are EVs. And this isn't too much of a surprise, but again, this is a 5-year study, so we don't really know what's happening now 1 year later or even 6 months later, because I have a feeling some of these vehicles that are EVs are going to appreciate in time, especially if gas prices stay high. So again, we'll just focus on the top 10 here. The Nissan Leaf at 63.1%. The Infiniti QX80, last generation's QX80 at 62.8. You're not finding that type of depreciation curve, at least within the first year or two with the current QX80. The Volkswagen ID4, yes, that's junk. That's been unreliable. It's been a problem for a lot of dealerships. It's already had a stop sale once. The Tesla Model S, the Land Rover, Range Rover, typical. BMW 7 Series, yep, right there. Tesla Model X, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the BMW 5 Series Hybrid, and the Infiniti QX60. If you continue on, you have the Tesla Model Y, the Kia Niro EV, Audi Q7, the Cadillac Escalade. You have the Jaguar F-Pace, which is, again, not too much of a surprise. Lincoln Navigator. So pretty straightforward vehicles there. But again, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to depreciation or appreciation. Because as we talked about before in previous videos, when you take a look at the day supply for used vehicles, luxury cars, they have a surplus. And we're seeing the depreciation hit very hard for those cars. I would not recommend buying a brand new BMW, Audi, or Mercedes-Benz right now, because you're going to lose so much money within a year or two, especially out of like a base 3 series or 4 series. Even the crossovers, they're not holding their value at all. You can buy like a Audi Q5, like a B9.5 in the 30s, a clean one too at that. With the EVs though, yes, the depreciation is very high. In fact, you can buy like a $20,000 Ford Mustang Mach-E, and depending on what state you live in, up here in Massachusetts, if you buy a used EV, you also get a $3,500 tax credit and incentive. So that $20,000 EV turns into, what, $16,500 before taxes and fees or taxes on that purchase. So you're getting one heck of a deal. I think in some ways, affordable vehicles still exist. It just depends on, are you willing to buy an EV or not? But I do think that if we see gas prices stay high, EVs are going to come up in value. And I have a feeling that's going to happen over the next few weeks or so. I'm going to be laser focused on that because I kind of want to buy an EV for the channel. Mostly because I want to see what it's like to live with one. I have experienced one for a weekend, but I want to experience one for an entire year and see what it's offering. There's some great deals out there. There's some EVs that I have driven on the channel and reviewed that I didn't think were going to be affordable, and they are. It's quite compelling. It really is. But really though, when it comes to appreciation, anything sports car related, it doesn't matter whether it's $30,000 or over $100,000 right now. The market is diluted. The market is just, I've never seen anything like this before. I really haven't on the sports car market. You have cars that shouldn't be worthy of collecting, and in some ways they're becoming investments. So that's why, like, when I see economists or financial experts say about how don't buy that vehicle, it's going to lose 10 to 20% of depreciation, and it's not an investment, it's not an asset. That's not 100% accurate anymore. And that is something that you have to really do a lot of research on, right? Buy a Toyota, buy a Honda if you want to retain your resale value for a regular daily driver. When it comes to sports cars though, I think anything's on the table. I really do. I even though I'm not someone who would recommend going out and buying a GR86, a Mazda Miata, or Honda Civic Si, you could do it and not lose any money in 3 years. So you can have fun and have a car that's not going to lose value. I mean, what's better than that right now? And that's really just how diluted the market is. And also, again, coming back to the car shortages affecting these used car prices, affecting the market as a whole. And when you have car auction sites and having auctions dictate market value, that's also going to come back to bite the car enthusiast community. It's going to come back to bite the car market as a whole. So right now, where the auto industry is in 2026, it is interesting. It is very interesting. It's just that I don't think it's buyer friendly. I think it's a seller's market more than a buyer's market. And we talked about that last week. But I think right now, if you can, hold off. If you can buy in cash, if you can buy a vehicle in cash, I see the incentives because you don't have the interest on a loan. So that's something I'm going to be focusing on. I'm going to have another video up probably very soon. In fact, I might do it right after this podcast is up. And we're going to talk about what's happening on the sports car side of the market because if you're a young enthusiast or you're just an enthusiast looking for something fun and an entry-level car, it's not 2017 anymore. So like your perceptions or your expectations walking in are going to have to be very different. When it comes to the regular market, the consumer market, it's pretty much the exact same, but if you're smart, if you play your cards right, you too could also have a vehicle that doesn't lose depreciation, and you have a great trade-in offer heading into the summer of 2026. So guys, thank you so much again for joining me on this episode of the Check Engine Light podcast. Let me know in the comment section below what you want to see being talked about in future episodes, because this is a very interesting market right now. It's extremely interesting because you have high demand, you have high prices, and there's a lot of intriguing storylines right now in the automotive industry that we can spend hours on discussing. Guys, once again, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.